All right, everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks for having me here at NG China. I'm very excited to be here. So many smiling faces. It's been a great city. I've been here since Tuesday night. So it's been a great city and a great experience. Today we're going to talk about Cypress and visual testing. So this is one of the very important topics, I think, in testing and changing how we approach testing. So before we get into that really quick here, my name is Jesse Sanders. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Rebug. We're an Angular consultancy in the United States. That is my real email address. You can email me there. I'll try to do my best to respond in a timely manner. And also, you can reach me on my Twitter account. When I'm not doing computer-related stuff, you can find me on bicycles, swimming, running, doing crazy stuff called triathlons, if anybody's interested. Good, fun stuff. So, who is currently doing end-to-end testing? Anybody? Few? All right. So who actually likes doing end-to-end testing? Less, yes. All right. So end testing has been very difficult as a developer. I can remember starting this about 10 years ago with Selenium and WebDriver, trying to write tests. We'd write these massive suites of tests, and then they would start to fail for no reason. A different test every day. And of course, it always worked on my machine. But we'd find failures, new failures up on the server, and we had no reason to explain why. We started doing a lot of things to hack it, create routes to get it to wait so that we could get the test to pass. And then what happened is the test just took longer and longer to run. So that all said, who's heard of Cypress? A few. Excellent. I think this is probably one of the best tools that you'll find. It is a game changer in terms of how you're going to do end-to-end testing. It allows us to do a lot of new things that just haven't been possible before. So this is including, I can stub my data. So one of the biggest challenges in writing end-to-end tests is how do I test my edge cases? How do I test that this panel shows up at the right time based on these other conditions? I have to have this perfect data scenario to be able to get that to occur. So now I can stub out my data and have it inject directly into my test, the exact data that I need so that it renders the way that I expect. I can also then take that data and I can put it into fixtures. So I can put those into JSON files that can then be referenced later and loaded as necessary so that I don't have to have that data directly in my test. I can also alias all of my routes. So to say I can go ahead and define a route, point it to a fixture, and then I can alias that so I can use it later. And probably even the most important part here is now I can also wait for data. So instead of having to write some sort of wait routine that will wait for a certain element to show up, I can actually wait for the data to complete and come back, whether I've stubbed it out or not, and that way I can guarantee that the elements will be there. I don't have any of these crazy timing issues. So what is visual testing? So we just talked a little bit about end-to-end testing and what Cypress is, but visual testing is something that a lot of us haven't gotten a lot of experience with. So visual testing is the idea here of detecting and viewing visual changes. So in the old days, this used to be a manual comparison process. Monitor A is what I have in development. Monitor B has what's currently in test or stage. I have to compare back and forth, page by page, manually. And this is a very difficult process to actually find changes unless they're big changes, right? But if somebody actually moves an element by a couple of pixels, do you think you could find it? Do you think if I changed the line spacing just a little bit that you'd be able to find it? I can tell you, having played my own examples out, I was unable to detect it, but visual testing catches that for me. So visual bugs, as I'm trying to say here, they're hard to catch. They're subtle, they're small changes. It might be small changes in color, small changes in positioning, and also it can be really big changes. But historically, it's been something that's been very difficult for us to be able to find and be able to do something about it. So, color variations. I'm colorblind. Anybody here colorblind? A little bit? No? So I don't see reds and greens quite as clearly. Like I see that's green, back there on the back wall, but when it gets really, really small, it becomes very difficult for me to see. And when we start to talk about when we're defining CSS classes and how we're wanting to position things and change things, we're dealing with pixel changes. We are talking about very, very small, tiny. In fact, when I was doing some visual tests to test how accurate it was, I had a very difficult time seeing that there was a change that it was pointing me at and saying this 1 pixel here has changed. It's too minute. So we run unit tests. We have integration tests. And we have end-to-end tests to help find issues. So why don't we do visual tests? I think the biggest reason for this is that the tools really haven't existed. And this is a newer concept for us to be able to do. And the manual process has been the only way for us to do this. So let's talk a little bit about how does it work. It's really quite simple. We take a base image, and then we take a current image, and then we compare them, and if there's any changes, then we go ahead and report on those. So with visual testing here, with some of the tools, we do get some variance, we do get some tolerance. We can say, hey, look, if it's off by a pixel, I don't care. We can fine-tune that as much as that we want. But really the main concept here, we're going to take what is our base, what is our accepted image, and then we're going to compare that to our current image, and if they don't match, then we want to be notified. So what problem does this solve? Why would you do this? Like why is this important? Well, one, this becomes part of our visual change control. So often what happens is that we accidentally, and I know none of you have ever probably had this happen, but I make a little change for my one component, and I accidentally change the entire web application accidentally. And now I've created some new problems. I didn't see it, and then sometimes what happens, the QA person that is testing this, they don't catch it either, and it makes it all the way into production. And this is something that we want to prevent. So we want to be able to test and validate complex user interfaces. So think about this. How would you test right now a graph? How would you test out your dashboard and make sure that it's rendering the same way? How would you test out your layouts? Make sure none of the images have changed. So I think graphs is really the particularly interesting one. There's a concept called deterministic. And what that means is that if given the same exact data, a component should render the same exact way every single time. And so the beautiful thing about visual testing with something like a graph is if we give it the same exact data set, it should render out the same exact way, and we'll be able to verify that. Otherwise, really, there's no other way to verify to make sure that this hasn't changed. So, and the other thing that happens here is developers change stuff. Sometimes it's accidental. Some developers change stuff because they just don't like the way it looks. So we can actually prevent that. We can keep our changes consistent and reliable, and not just have it be accidental in terms of visual changes. So let's talk about what tools are available. There's two basic ways that you can do this. I'm sure there's several other tools out there, but I'm going to show you one that is a very manual way and one that is a very automated way. So the tools are Cypress Visual Regression. This is the manual way of doing it. And then we're going to look at another tool called Percy IO. And this is the full suite. It will do everything for you. It makes it very simple. So let's talk about Cypress Visual Regression. Has anybody ever seen this kind of car before? Does anybody know what this is? Anybody? This is called a Yugo. It's made in Yugoslavia. It didn't come with a radio. Everything on it was the basic. It barely ran. It barely could get you, it could get you from point A to point B, but there was no air conditioning, no heat, none of the basic things that you would want while riding in your car. But it would get you there. So this tool is really the Yugo of visual testing. So it is a plug-in for Cypress. It does do the basics of comparing the current to the baseline. It fails the test if the images are different. And as I said, it is the Yugo for visual testing. It's not going to do any of the hard work for you. If any of the tests fail, you're going to have to go figure it out. So we do this by installing, using npm install. We can say, I want to install the Cypress Visual Regression tool, save it to my dev dependencies. And then we have to do some configuration. Now remind you, I said this is going to be a manual process. There's no radio, right? So I have to modify my Cypress JSON. I have to then go find my plugins and add the couple of lines there to my index.js. And then I have to go find my support folder, command.js, and I've got to add a couple of lines there. All this to just get it wired up. It's not too bad. It's actually pretty simple, but it is a manual process. Then here's a sample test. So I write my first test, and here I'm going out to Amazon.com, and I want to just then take a compare snapshot, and I'm going to give it a name. This will go ahead and tell Cypress to run the compare snapshot command, which is what we just wired up in the prior examples. And this will go ahead and capture what's going to be our image, whether it be the baseline or the current. So again, this being a manual process, the first time that I run this, I have to tell it that I want it to be of type base. So you can see up here on the first line, I have type base, and then on the second one, I'm doing type actual. I'm also telling it where to go ahead and store the screenshots so it can do the comparisons and find those later. Okay? So by doing this, when I run the second time and to do the comparison, it's going to say these are now the actual files. That's going to compare it against the baseline, and we're going to get some sort of feedback. This is what feedback looks like. So in this case here, this is my baseline. This is what we currently got. This is our actual. And then over here is the difference, all in red. So this works really nice. I can obviously see what's changed, what hasn't changed. I mean, most things have changed, as you can see, right? There's not much that hasn't. This works great locally on my local machine, but what happens if I use a build server? What if I use Circle CI? How do I get these files from that remote build machine down local so I can see them? That's more challenging. So this tool is great for, like I say, doing it locally, but it really becomes more difficult when I want to run it on my CI server. So it'll get you visual regression testing, and it'll get you partway there. But the reality is, it is a you-go, and it's not going to really get you there in style. Who likes to arrive in style? Anybody? Yeah, I know you do. I do too. I like good tools. So, Percy I/O. This is the Cadillac. Anybody know what a Cadillac is? Right? Cadillacs have lots of nice features. So, this is the Cadillac solution. It stores images up on the cloud for me. I don't have to go find them when things go wrong. It integrates directly with GitHub and my PR process. So I can go ahead and wire this up as the tech lead, and if your visual changes don't match and they don't get approved, then your PR doesn't get approved, and there's no way to put it up. Percy has a really nice approval process flow, which we'll take a look at as we dig in here. But this gives me all the tools. It makes it very, very nice for me to be able to do. So to do the install here, very similar. The first line, I'm going to go ahead and do my npm install. And then I need to go ahead and import it at the top of my commands.js file. And then, very similar to what I was doing using the visual regression tool, I can just say Cypress.Percy snapshot, and that will go ahead and do my capture. And then to run Cypress with Percy, I just say npx Percy execute, Cypress run, and we're off. Great, so here I have the same exact test. The only difference here is I'm using Percy snapshot versus compare snapshot. So really not much has changed. So with Percy, one of the things that I have to do is I have to sign up for an account. They have a free account that's available. Gives you a certain number of images uploaded every single month. And once you have that, you'll go ahead and create a project. And once you have a project, it's going to give you a Percy token that you'll just need to add to your command line. So this is something really easy to be able to do. You can put this onto your CI server. The Percy token be part of the command line, and we can go ahead and kick off our tests. So to create a new project, we go out to Percy I/O. We say, hey, create a new project. We give it a name, and we're off to the races. So here I have an example of how we'd run it locally on my machine. And you can see here I'm exporting my Percy token. There's my token that I copied and pasted in, and then I just run my command to go ahead and kick off the tests. So you can see here the output is actually very similar as what we got before. So on the left here, I have what is my baseline. On my right, I actually have two things. I have what is my actual and what are my changes. And what we can do here is in Percy, we can just click on the image on the right, and it will switch it between what's actual and what are the changes. What's actual, what are the changes. Nice and simple. I mentioned that there was the GitHub integrations for the PR process. You can see here, this is a screenshot where we've got our CI services run our tests, everything is passed, and we've also run Percy, and the visual view, it was approved by the master tester is, and now there's no conflicts. I can squash and merge this into my main. So, it's all great when we talk about theory. Let's actually take a look at a little bit of code here, and let's see how this works. So the first thing I want to talk to you about, this is a very simple sample site called ngdoc.io. It's a list of Angular articles on the right-hand side, and then over on the left-hand side, we have a list of tags and whatnot where we can search to go ahead and find articles. So it is functional. I can click here on animations, it'll reload, and it'll find articles that have animations. So pretty simple. And then over here, I have Percy. So you can see I've been running a few tests. making sure that it's going to work. You can see that we've got some changes. We'll go take a look at one that's unreviewed. Is it going to go? There we go. This is where the internet gives me problems. There we go. We'll just connect to my phone really quick and we'll see if that, uh-oh. Excellent. So now we're going to go back to my app. And we have some internet connectivity. And I'm going to look at one of these here that is unreviewed. So this is my build 20. You can see here on my left-hand side, I have my baseline. And then over on the right-hand side, I can see this is what it actually rendered. And here are the changes. So what actually is happening here is I have a timing issue. Notice that on the left, I have these tags that are rendered, and over on the right, the tags didn't render. So it's really nothing more than a timing issue. I'll show you some code on that in a minute, but that's what was causing our test here to fail. What's also nice is I can look and see what it would render and look like on a mobile device. Don't know if I have enough speed here to get that to work. But anyway, I can switch back and forth between those and be able to see it. I can also see the difference between what it looks like in Firefox versus Chrome. And then if I'm the approver, I have one of two options. Well, I have really three options. I can go ahead and make comments and say, hey, for this one here, I want to make this comment. These are the changes that I want you to make. And then I can go ahead and say request changes. That will go ahead and fail this until these changes get made and until such time that I want to say I want to go ahead and approve it. Or I can just come in and take a look at these really quick and say, hey, go ahead and approve all of these. All right. So over here we have some of our code. And the problem that we were seeing with the tags and why those weren't showing up is really just a timing issue. I wasn't actually being patient and waiting for tags to render. And so sometimes they would be rendered and sometimes they wouldn't by the time that Percy was taking a screenshot. And so I actually had to go ahead and create an additional route here, declare the route for API tags, give it an alias, and then wait for both articles and tags to load so that I could guarantee that all the data was there. So when we go to take the snapshot, I'm doing it in a consistent manner. All right. So what I want to do here now is come over to my search component. And we're going to go ahead and make some changes to some CSS just so we can see what happens here. So I am going to come in, I think label's a good one here. I'm going to change the padding. Actually, it was 15. Let's just make it, it's 14, right? You wouldn't even be able to see this change. It's going to be so minute. So now I'm going to go ahead and kick off my tests. Now I've added a NPM script in my package JSON called Percy test to make this a little bit easier. I'll go ahead and kick this off. If you forget to add your Percy token, it'll still run the test, but you'll see an error message saying that you don't have a Percy token, and thus it won't actually interact with Percy, but it still will run your tests. So here our tests are running. And almost done here. So it's taking snapshots. It's also recording some video. So one of the other really nice features here with Cypress is that it will actually go ahead and create videos of the tests, what was run, so you can be able to see those. Those are going to be up here in your Cypress folder under videos. You can see there's 2 videos in here. Our tests are done. We're going to need to give it just another second. So if we go, say, Reveal in Finder, you can see the actual tests as they ran, what was occurring. You have a log here of what's happened. All right, go ahead and kill that, get that out of the way. Now if we come back over here to Percy, so we've got a new set of tests to look at. And you can see all this red that's occurred over here. But when I pull it, I take the diff off, and I have to manually compare between these 2. Can you see the difference? Do you think QA would catch that difference? Probably not. Like it's the same thing, right? But clearly we're talking about 1 pixel difference on each one on these here, and it is picking up that change. So I actually tried this with something smaller where I just changed the curve of a button by 1 pixel. I couldn't even see when I had this representation, the difference pulled up, I couldn't even actually see the change. It's too small. I actually had to magnify it to go, oh, yeah, it did catch that. I knew it caught something, but it looked like just a white screen to me. So, let's come back over here. All right, so what I hope you learned today from this talk is why you might want to consider bringing visual testing into your testing process. If you're already using a tool like Protractor or you're using Cypress, you can integrate this into your existing end-to-end tests with very little work. Really all you have to do is go ahead and install the right library for either Cypress or Protractor into your project, and then you can go ahead and kick these off and have it do a screen capture so you can verify the functionality in your applications and make sure that nothing's changed. So it's a very easy entry point. We can do these types of visual change control and make sure that we're not accidentally making changes to our visual elements. And like I say, it's very easy using a tool like Percy.io. So with that, I hope you see that this is a tool that works, that allow you to create more powerful tests with what you're already doing and be able to prevent these sorts of problems. And with that, you can find me this year. I've been out traveling quite a bit. Angular Denver is a conference that we do in Denver that I'm the organizer for. So if you've ever been thinking of wanting to be up on stage and come and speak, highly recommend that you reach out. We'll have a CFP that will be starting in April. There are a few speakers here that made it this year. Also NGConf, Angular Up, IJS, other great conferences around the world. So with that, thanks for coming out. If you get a chance, look up my company, Brebug. We do Angular training, consulting. We're Angular GDEs. And thanks so much for having me. Have a great day.